Hello, welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. Hit me up on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and you can find the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Really cool show for you guys today. I've been wanting to have this guy on the podcast for a while now. We've been talking about it. Finally made it happen. Someone I always learn from when I talk to him, and he delivers in this interview. My guest on the podcast today is Russell Simon. He is a partner at Zero Blitz Media. Talks all about his time at Snap with the NFL, and certainly what he's doing now with Zero Blitz Media, creating social first premium content for brands, athletes, creators. He'll go more into it as well. Just tons of lessons about building up the live content creator program, the LCC program at the NFL, the value of the short form, social first, mobile first content, how it's evolved over time. Just lots of good information, lots of good lessons and insights, great examples and stories. So here he is, Russell Simon of Zero Blitz Media. Back on the podcast with today's guest. I'm so excited to talk to him. If only you guys knew, this has been weeks, months in the making. Ever since I had my first chat with Russell, I've wanted to have him on the podcast. Just smart dude, really accomplished, still young in the game, doing cool stuff now. We're going to hear all about it. So my guest on the podcast today, without further ado, is Russell Simon. He is a partner at Zero Blitz Media. We'll have him tell us all about what they're doing at Zero Blitz. Really cool stuff. But welcome to the podcast today, Russell.
Neil, first time, long time. Feels really good to say that, and obviously excited to be ushering in the video era for you as well.
Hell yeah. You have so much to teach us, really accomplished already in your career, doing cool stuff now. So before we get in the meat of our discussion, Russell, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, your stops along the way. We'll get into it in more depth later. And of course, tell us about what you and David are doing today at Zero Blitz Media.
Sure. So I always knew I wanted to be in sports in some capacity. I was a broadcaster for the student radio station at USC, calling games at the roof of the Coliseum. And that led to an internship at the NBA, where I was on their original production team back in 2016. And it was really there where I saw how social was really rapidly becoming really important. And the people in the group, were pretty young. And it was pretty apparent to me that this was a growing area that I could orient my career potentially around. So I went back to school, and fortunately, Snapchat was in LA. So my senior year, while I was still in school, I made a move to Snap to just be a live story editor who was on their team. And it was a very live content focused role. And from there, graduated, was sort of like, okay, no, I want to stay in content, social. Snap was really blowing up at the time. And the NFL was then coming and looking to hire someone to help build out this live content program. And the idea was to really help the team capture more content and capture more content. And I got Josh Tucker, Elliot, Dave Feldman to
Yeah.
agree to take a flyer and hire me to help launch this program. And my role at the NFL was really to build out their creator program into what became an always-on program supporting the NFL, clubs, players, and sponsors on game day and off the field. From there, during COVID, when the program was a little quieter, as I can get into, I moved to the NFL's media strategy BD team, focused on social and emerging tech partnerships. So doing all of the deals and managing the partnerships to grow reach and revenue between the NFL and their social partners. And then that led me back into content world, where I've now joined my good friend from the NFL and one of the top creators who I built the program with, David Kushner, in building out Zero Blitz Media, which is a production company focused on social first content for brands, creators, and athletes.
Hell yeah, and we'll get more in depth with everything. And I mean, you glossed over some things, like you you did quite a bit with the NFL with their BD, meaning like how do we monetize all this awesome engagement and all this short form content and all this mobile first content. Now what you're doing today with helping brands across the board with this short form content. And so, like, how did you take those learnings from building this LC program? I know it became a big part of what ultimately led to what you're doing today with Zero Blitz. So tell us kind of that evolutionary story.
For sure. So, and it's a good story. So, while I was building the LCC program, one of the best creators that was part of the program, his name was David Kushner. And he worked already with many top athletes, and he shot multiple Super Bowls for us, creative genius. And we became really good friends. And over the years, he's had Zero Blitz since 2017 running his own production company.
Mhm.
And it really evolved from, he was LCCing, he was going to the Super Bowl, he was working with a bunch of top athletes, and then brands started coming to him and saying, hey, we have a shoot with one of our big athletes. Instead of paying some big ad agency to do it, you have the relationship with the player. We trust you. You should produce it and you should do
Yeah.
it. And he started to see a lot of success in developing, premium social first content beyond just what we were doing with the LCC program and what we were doing for the league. And so, the light bulb really went off for me sort of second half of last year. And now I'm really excited to be full time. But we are really a production company that partners with agencies and brands to develop premium social first content. And we'll work with brands, creators, and athletes primarily around events, branded content, and promotional campaigns, and
Mhm.
then just developing original content. And we work with brands including Google. We've supported Patrick Mahomes, the NBA, WNBA, and many more. And so for me, it really was a great evolution because all of the things that were successful at the league, running big content teams, activating at a really high level around events, driving conversation and fandom and reaching fans where they are on social. We now do that instead of doing it for the Shield. We do it for ourselves. And it's been a really rewarding experience to work with David and to build this thing out on behalf of our partners. And so we typically are working on a couple different verticals all around really developing premium social first production. So the first one is events. So, real-time photo and video, cinematic event recaps and highlight films,
Mhm.
overseeing, large content teams. We were just at NBA All-Star Weekend working on behalf of a brand and had, 8 different creators all executing with influencers and talent and different activations at different times.
Mhm.
And so games, events, conferences, VIP experiences is really one of the main things we focus on. The second piece is promotional campaigns. So we create buzz for products and partnerships, whether it's talent-driven content featuring influencers, creators, and athletes, or product launches and updates. Then the final piece is really more original content. So I think of that as, it can be branded content when there is a brand integration, but whether it's
Mhm.
TikTok, Reels, Shorts, or more long form content, we just developed a series on WNBA MVP Asia Wilson last year that went out across YouTube and on the WNBA app. And that's something that's more long form. But on the
Yeah.
short form side, we support our brands really heavily breaking through. And it's been really fun. We see a lot of opportunity and, we're excited for a big 2025.
Good shit.
All right, I thought that was good.
Oh, I know that was good. I think and I can already picture where I will integrate that. And okay, three, two, one. And so, like, how did you take those learnings from building this LC program? I know it became a big part of what ultimately led to what you're doing today with Zero Blitz. So tell us kind of that evolutionary story.
For sure. So, and it's a good story. So, while I was building the LCC program, one of the best creators that was part of the program, his name was David Kushner. And he worked already with many top athletes and he shot multiple Super Bowls for us, creative genius. And we became really good friends. And over the years, he's had Zero Blitz since 2017 running his own production company.
Mhm.
And it really evolved from, he was LCCing, he was going to the Super Bowl, he was working with a bunch of top athletes, and then brands started coming to him and saying, hey, we have a shoot with one of our big athletes. Instead of paying some big ad agency to do it, you have the relationship with the player. We trust you. You should produce it and you should do
Yeah.
it. And he started to see a lot of success in developing, premium social first content beyond just what we were doing with the LCC program and what we were doing for the league. And so, the light bulb really went off for me sort of second half of last year. And now I'm really excited to be full time. But we are really a production company that partners with agencies and brands to develop premium social first content. And we'll work with brands, creators, and athletes primarily around events, branded content, and promotional campaigns, and
Mhm.
then just developing original content. And we work with brands including Google. We've supported Patrick Mahomes, the NBA, WNBA, and many more. And so for me, it really was a great evolution because all of the things that were successful at the league, running big content teams, activating at a really high level around events, driving conversation and fandom and reaching fans where they are on social. We now do that instead of doing it for the Shield. We do it for ourselves. And it's been a really rewarding experience to work with David and to build this thing out on behalf of our partners. And so we typically are working on a couple different verticals all around really developing premium social first production. So the first one is events. So, real-time photo and video, cinematic event recaps and highlight films,
Mhm.
overseeing, large content teams. We were just at NBA All-Star Weekend working on behalf of a brand and had, 8 different creators all executing with influencers and talent and different activations at different times.
Mhm.
And so games, events, conferences, VIP experiences is really one of the main things we focus on. The second piece is promotional campaigns. So we create buzz for products and partnerships, whether it's talent-driven content featuring influencers, creators, and athletes, or product launches and updates. Then the final piece is really more original content. So I think of that as, it can be branded content when there is a brand integration, but whether it's
Mhm.
TikTok, Reels, Shorts, or more long form content, we just developed a series on WNBA MVP Asia Wilson last year that went out across YouTube and on the WNBA app. And that's something that's more long form. But on the
Yeah.
short form side, we support our brands really heavily breaking through. And it's been really fun. We see a lot of opportunity, and we're excited for a big 2025.
But I want to back up a little bit and kind of hear like when you were starting out in your career with the NBA, with then later with Snap, like it wasn't now looking back, it's like, oh, of course, this was always the direction it was going to go. Of course, you want to see someone like who's there with their mobile device or looks like they're right on there and looks like a friend is just texting you a video or photo from inside the tunnel as Taylor Swift comes in the stadium, wherever it might be. It wasn't a foregone conclusion at the time that that was the direction we were going. It was a lot of polished stuff. Instagram was about, oh, you need high production value. We can't have this look like it looks shitty. So, like, what was that kind of evolution like when you got to Snap, or even when you were in the NBA early on? Like, what was it an obvious thing? Like, well, of course we should be doing this. Of course, this is what social is going to become. Like, how did you kind of pick up on that and learn the kind of the early principles of what later became best practice in social?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the conversations now around, UGC and creators were all things that were happening at Snapchat when we were building live stories, just sort of under a different sort of frame of reference, if you will, right? Like if people remember live stories, users could go to different events that they just happened to be at
Yeah, games,
and
concerts, etc.
anything. And there was typically an option to submit your story into sort of the Snapchat portal where it could be considered to be included in a live story. And I, in particular, work mostly on the sports team. And so we had deals with NBA, NFL, Premier League, all of these different leagues. And basically, for a lot of different events, we would take in a curated feed of snaps from just regular users on the ground
Hmm.
and actually turn that into a curated 2 to 3 minute UGC driven story of that event, where I would be, sort of in the Marina Del Rey content lab, adding graphics and After Effects and trying to make this narrative really engaging. But it was ultimately sort of a UGC product and an early prelude to, IG stories and what eventually became TikTok. And live stories, the number one thing that really stood out to me was they were just incredibly fun. Users would submit snaps from all of these different things. And the energy in a lot of them was just really great. And you could really try and capture, these moments and make them engaging in a way that simply sitting down to watch it on your couch was not. And this was sort of an early, really good second screen experience that we were programming. And it was also interesting because, there was a lot of effort that we put into storytelling, and you never knew what you were going to get submitted from different users and from our people on the ground. And so there was so much of a real time adrenaline rush to
I'm
be
sure.
putting these things together in real time. And we had a really interesting mix of sort of data and gut feel that you were able to use to make these things really compelling.
And what was the kind of objective like of your role? Was it a find the best content that would presumably maybe go viral or get someone to keep tapping through, or was it
Yeah.
like, hey, what I found interesting too is that you kind of said you try to build a narrative. Like we want someone to tap into the story and feel like they got the beginning, middle, and end. Was that kind of like part of it too? Was like telling that story, or was it more about just surfacing up the best content from on the ground, however it may come about?
So it was really about sort of less just a chronological narrative and much more about we were competing to win every single second of a user's time. And the
Hmm.
goal was to know if you kept people over 5 or 6 seconds, they were likely to continue to watching. This is all commonplace stuff now in the industry, but so much of it was about creating those hooks that really grabbed people and then weaving in a narrative of this event at the same time. And so it wasn't just about, high energy things all the time necessarily, but if you were doing a Premier League game, for example, or an NBA game, you know, you're getting unbelievable access typically. Like you can be, in the locker rooms through partnerships we had with the league. You're getting the tailgate in a really high energy way. You're getting crazy fan reaction videos to the good things that happen. And they had a natural audience on the platform that really made this an incredibly rewarding early career experience for me.
Yeah. So before we hear more about the LCC program with the NFL, I mean, I guess just tell us what exactly it is. What does LC even stand for, and how did the
Yes.
program start to evolve during your time there?
So the LCC program, or the Live Content Correspondence Program, as we call it, is a league-run media program that was started in 2017 and effectively brings fans as close as they can get to game day. So there are creators stationed at every game to capture the best moments as they happen. And we've built out a huge distribution network on social and NFL media owned and operated platforms. And the program grew because you could take, the Brady fist pump, the game-winning touchdown, and really extend that moment on NFL social, club social, player social, owned and operated platforms. So
Mhm.
NFL Fantasy, the NFL app, you could send it directly to partners. You could send it to emerging media partners, TikTok, Giphy, etc. And then it really started from just capturing the best moments in the best quality as they happen on the field. And then the second piece of this was really outside of game day. The LCC program served as the NFL's in-house creator network effectively.
Mhm.
And so what we did was we created original content off the field. And this really bore out in a couple of different ways. And so it was really around events, so like combine, draft, etc.,
Mhm.
summer workouts, Pro Bowl, Super Bowl. We were running content teams of 15 creators working to cover
Wow.
events and different things in the run up to Super Bowl. Then there's player driven storytelling. So doing things directly with a lot of athletes. Then there's international, especially in the UK and emerging markets. You're covering, player pathway programs and telling the story of fans in different markets and players trying to make it to the league from these different markets. Then there's cause driven storytelling. So activating around My Cause, My Cleats, telling the story of how players are choosing their favorite charities, etc.
Hmm.
And then obviously activating around creators. So when creators are working with the league and they're going to different events, we're augmenting their own capabilities with videographers, photographers, and people from the LCC network to actually help them capture what they need to capture. And so I built out, along with Samantha Strejek and many others at the league, this program that became in many ways the NFL's in-house social agency, activating 365 days a year for all of these groups on game day and beyond.
You get to the NFL, you realize that they are like, are they already bought in on the fact that this kind of content is the direction that we need to head? That hey, it might not look as polished or as produced as a linear broadcast, but that's a feature, not a bug. Like that gives it a more of a verisimilitude or a cinema verite, whatever fancy
Yeah.
words you want to use. Like, was there already buy-in there? It was just a matter of you coming in and saying, "Hey, we have to operationalize this," or was there a little bit of like this? I saw this work at Snap every day, and this is what the kids are into, and so we need to be into it too.
So Josh Tucker and several others at the league who had come through other leagues and had done things before had set out to sort of launch this. And then they were looking for someone to come in and really operationalize it and
Mhm.
be the boots on the ground. And I think, everyone knew at the time that, real social first, more organic content was only going to be more and more prominent. But really, I was hired just to set up this program to help the clubs capture more content on game day.
Mhm.
It sounds antiquated, but in 2017, the goal really was to just provide sort of standard level of resources at each game when you have a very small window to maximize the most valuable content that you're going to be capturing at every game. And the NFL wanted to have a presence there to support the clubs. So you know the going in, it wasn't about, we want to create the best second screen experience possible for our fans. It was, let's help the clubs. And so that was the mandate really in year one, and then it was
Yeah.
able to really grow from there.
And what kind of dictated the kind of content that you wanted to capture? Were the clubs saying, "Hey, here's this is what we have in mind," and communicate that to the on-site creators? Was there like how, did you start to kind of pick up on, or whether it's through data or through anecdotal evidence of this is what good content is? I mean, now we take it for granted, like, well, of course you want to have the rivals are the highlight of the game day in some cases, especially with the NBA and the NFL.
Yeah.
Get that close of warm-ups, or make sure you're getting that be situated right here during a kickoff or during a an extra point, whatever it may be. So how did you start to pick up on what good looked like, and then how did it work about communicating that to the creators on the ground?
For sure. So in the beginning, it was really about bringing the best moments as they happened to game day. So I remember, literally week one, we got Brady running out of the tunnel and doing the fist pump, and our LCC was, right there with him. And in the past, this was something that would have just been ripped from the TV broadcast and sort of posted on,
Yeah.
Twitter and Facebook, and sort of was not native to each platform. And the light bulb went off for everyone very early on because we operationalized the program. We had creators in every market shooting mainly video content
Hmm.
on a mix of DSLR and phone primarily in the beginning. And we realized pretty early on that we had accidentally created a new rights category of sort of real time social first content from every game. Like we had the best moments from the minute the first player walks in the door for arrivals until the game ends and you get a player signing off, speaking directly to the fans, you know, 20 seconds after the game ends. So it started to very quickly open up a world of possibilities
Hmm.
just on game day. And so that's where, my work for the first year, for the first 2 years really, was just getting the operations out. What do we need to actually be able to upload from the field? Should they be on 70 to 200 and DSLR cameras, or, is a phone better in certain moments?
Right.
How do we actually, work across? Because remember, we started really just to help the clubs on social and just get all this stuff. But
Yeah.
over time, everyone, the league, people in NFL social were interested in this content. people in NFL Network were interested in this content. There became a really big ecosystem that LCCs were powering just on game day. And
Yeah.
so we were building this out in a really organic way, but just the best moments as they happen was the starting point.
Yeah, and you touched something too that was interesting. The Brady fist pump example. You said like, well, yes, like the linear broadcast, CBS, Fox, whoever it is, might be capturing that on their giant video cameras too for their professional broadcast. But something feels different when we capture it on the DSLRs or the mobile device or wherever that person that's right there. So like, are you thinking about it of there's a different level, there's a different feel to this kind of content, even if it's the same thing you're seeing on broadcast, like that, there's a different level of engagement that's going to get, or is it more about like, let's get the stuff the broadcast is not even going to attempt to capture? Like, how do you juxtapose those things?
Yeah, so I would say it was really about presenting it in more of a social first native experience was really what the LCC program did, right? Like we were able to take, you know, a shot, a really cool entrance shot of Mahomes or a really well-dressed player. And we were able to take that literally 7-second moment from just something that flashes across the pregame show to, a really elevated moment that can live across social, across the player channels, across this whole distribution network.
Yeah.
And so obviously there was some element of we're getting things that the broadcast cameras simply aren't. Like we're able to be much more nimble.
Yeah.
But the goal was really to provide a social first experience and provide a really, really good second screen experience, no matter how you're actually engaging the content, whether you're on social, O&O, whatever it may be. But it was definitely always very social first.
This is going to be a loaded question, so I'll bounce around a little bit to give you some time to think. But how do you define social first and native, both maybe back then as well as if it's changed today, and what that means for how you would instruct a creator, what it means for what a team should be thinking about from a strategy perspective when it comes to content? How would you define social first? And maybe it varies by platform, maybe it varies by generation, maybe it varies by type of event. But
For sure.
I'm done rambling, so you have enough time to think.
Yeah. I mean, look, it obviously is different now than the way it was when we were starting the
Yeah.
LCC program. When we were starting the program, it was like, hey, you're either a broadcast camera, like no one even knew what to do with us, in the
Totally.
very beginning. I think, there was always an eye towards how we could sort of capture this moment and then elevate it, whether it was with some storytelling, some context, some cool, graphics or an edit, and just take things beyond, a player arrival or a really cool touchdown shot into something that, you couldn't see elsewhere, you couldn't see on a broadcast,
Mhm.
or something that, had a bit of polish or something that would make it stand out. And I think even today, if you think about you know, now the LCC program and sort of game day content has blossomed so much from what it was. But
Mhm.
even now, if you're just on the sidelines getting a really cool shot, that's typically just the foundation. And there's a lot of things that everyone is doing, whether it's to make it, platform native, add some storytelling around it. There are things everyone is doing to take that one moment and really elevate it and make it stand out.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that stood out to me early on with LCC. I remember I actually discussed this on a podcast episode with at the time Tyler Moorhead was with the Raiders. Now he's with the Pacers and Fever. And something I told him about the Raiders content, and I'm a Raiders fan, so this helped a little bit, was the eye contact. When you were going through warmups and the players looked at the LCC, like they looked at the camera. You're not getting it from the broadcast because generally because they don't the cameras are far away. They're not there up next to you.
For sure. It's much more
Level of like
personal.
that connection was so like powerful, and so that's certainly a part of it too. So as these LCC started to embed themselves into game day, was there any sort of like this is where you're allowed to go, this is where you're not, and getting the team buying, getting to make sure the players knew that hey, someone might be 3 feet away from you while you're throwing a ball during warmups or stretching, but that's okay. Like how was it sort of was that just sort of like given at that point that players and teams were used to that level of access and having people with their phones around all the time? This is okay, or was there any sort of like
Yeah.
education process there?
There was a heavy education process, and that was really, a big early part of the program was like we never wanted to overstep what a team what a club had in place for their regulations and everything like that.
Yeah,
So in terms of where you could be to sort of get the best content on game day, it's the same thing, a sports social team would deal with now.
Mhm.
But, we were always very cognizant of where we fit with the broader ecosystem of broadcast cameras and teams and all that to
Yeah,
not overstep. And at the beginning, we really did have to work within the confines of a lot of sort of rules and restrictions about how our content could be used and when it could be used that have
yeah,
really evolved to become more friendly over time. Like I think, in the very beginning, there was certainly a view among some that getting the best moments as they happen and putting them on social would negatively impact the broadcast.
yeah.
And
I'm rolling
what
my
we
eyes.
ended up, and what we ended up doing was, and we had great leaders, Ian Trombetta, Rich Elmore, people, Josh, people who really understood that, no, providing an amazing social experience on game day is going to build conversation around our games and
Yeah,
actually get people to watch.
hell
And
yeah,
our best clips were having, tune in information and links to watch on all of it. And so, I give our leaders a lot of credit for being open to seeing how impactful our content was on game day and
yeah,
pretty quickly, really saying, hey, let's turbocharge this. The LCC
Mhm.
program went from, one creator in every market to basically immediately for the second season, two creators and a lot more resources. And, we got a ton of support from the league office and from the clubs, and I was the one along with Samantha Strejek, earning the trust of the clubs where on Sunday, we were there with them for 15 hours,
yeah,
managing all of our creators, making sure that we captured everything we needed to capture, make beyond just the moments, if there were special sponsor asks, special player asks,
yeah.
really being cognizant of how we could be helpful to this ecosystem that we built out. And that's really what made it effective. People trusted us to be there with really high quality, strong professionalism and to deliver. And that's sort of what allowed it to grow to the
Yeah.
point that it did.
And how did the sort of process of capturing a game, capturing an event, start to like coalesce and evolve and get more honed in as you spent time, and even taking these lessons into what you do today with Zero Blitz Media, like the idea of this is what good looks like. This is where you should be doing at this time during game day. And I'm sure like a lot of that, like how much agency was there on the creator front to let them do their thing and be creative with it. And maybe you take best practice. Hey, this creator in Green Bay had some good stuff. Maybe we should show this to the rest of the LCC so they can learn from that as well. Like, how did you start to think about like what the ideal day in the life of an LC or where an L like what an LC should be producing on game day could kind of start to
Yeah.
grow?
So, you know, you can teach people how to shoot a football game, where to stand, the best spots to be to maximize your chances of getting the best moments. I would say the LCC program became a place where your skills and experience and the work that you had put in to get to that point put you in a place to shine and grow in terms of, being able to capture the best moments as they happen very quickly became just table stakes where everyone is going to be, very solid and have sort of the level that we would expect. And then it was how you go beyond that. And that, all of our creators were able to sort of make their own in a different way, right? Some became, and that's where David and I have focused more on sort of cinema quality. We're turning around really quick, awesome edits of pregame or from arrivals, and people are like, literally, how did you do this as quickly as you did it? with the quality you did it. Some are, we're operating red cameras on the sidelines and truly providing a view that no one is seeing in real time on game day. It's
Yeah.
comparable to like NFL films quality, but you're seeing it 10 seconds, right after the play happens. Others sort of moved in more of sort of a, I'd say, social first direction where they're, more focused on maybe like storytelling for TikTok and things like that. And we really learned over the course of the program that just because it's shot on a DSLR does not necessarily make it like good content.
Right.
It means different things depending on the platform, depending on the moment, depending on the story that you're able to tell around this. And we've seen, I think the program and like sports social evolve much more where, getting the highlights are table stakes. But as algorithms, you know, don't play on like the immediacy as much, being able to, show that player's outfit and like the history of why they chose it and some storytelling or some polish around what you're doing makes things really stand out. And that's where the program, we sort of went from highlights and then we graduated. And I think, teams have, the league has, everyone really has, into more telling narratives around what's going
Yeah.
on. And that hasn't changed from when I was doing Snapchat live stories to when you're running a TikTok account during a game for a team in 2025.
Totally. And I think what's interesting too, when you think about like the NFL compared to MLB or maybe some of the like the partners and events that you work on now with Zero Blitz, like there's only so many NFL games, and so you can't necessarily, not to take one off is the wrong way to put it, but hey, like I know that this will go viral on TikTok if I get like here is the team doctor on the sideline stitching up this player in real time, or here's what it looks like when they are whatever preparing the grass before the game, like some of that like oddly entertaining stuff that just goes
Mm-hmm.
viral because it's so behind the scenes, and like that kind of stuff it just became bigger and bigger over time and reaches a different kind of audience that may not care who scored the touchdown. So as you start to think about the content that you're producing overall, both with LCC and certainly today in your current role, are you thinking about the best content is what's going to reach the most audience, or is there more nuance to where hey, we want to try to reach a new audience. We want to try to reach a diverse audience, or this platform is going to favor maybe some stuff that's not as esoteric to NFL fans, as an example.
Yeah.
How do you
I
think
mean,
about success?
so I think I'm going to answer this from NFL life and then from Zero Blitz life. And I think from NFL life, you have your core base of fans and you want to reach them and cater to them and provide them access and engaging content and content tailor made for the specific platforms. Where if I want to watch a 7-minute YouTube recap of the win from Sunday, I can do that. If I want to watch a 1-minute TikTok from the equipment manager that I'm really into, I can do that too. And so you sort of have an element of, and the most important thing always is reaching and speaking to the fans you have in a really authentic way.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of opportunities to sort of focus on more general stories and things that may not just appeal to your core fans. And I think like creators play into this really well, where you can like bring influencers into games or events or with players, from a sports perspective.
Yeah.
And there's definitely an element of any good strategy right now in terms of how you reach and grow beyond your core fans. And I think a lot of that, frankly, is stuff that is not just a highlight, but talking to the doctor, talking to the equipment manager. We worked on a show when I was at the league on the BD side, Most Interesting Jobs. And, that's the show that like my fiance will sit down and watch and think is really interesting. And they're barely showing a highlight at all. And like the stories around the game, there's only going to be more opportunity in there. Look at what happened with the manager from McNeese State,
Right.
with the tournament. Like, just, even if you're not a player and it's not just focused on game day, what good looks like is platform specific, is audience specific, and is part of, an overall strategy. And that's sort of where, David and I fit in with our new company is, we produce premium social first content for brands, athletes, creators, and especially around like events or promotional campaigns, whether it's a TikTok or a YouTube long form series, because we do both, there are different tricks and tools that we're doing to sort of keep attention, and whether it's win it in the first 5 seconds or
Mhm.
keep people engaged over the course of 7 minutes, there are different, it's a different strategy, and your approach is going to be tailor made depending on who you are.
I mean, heck, there's a whole like episode, another podcast episode there we can talk about like the Mr. Beastification of video and how that's gone up and down over the course of the past probably couple of years. Where I think Mr. Beast was like, you have to do something every few seconds to like keep them engaged and keep watching. And then there's been a little bit of a pivot away from that to be like, no, it's okay. Like you can get them engrossed, and the long form is okay, and you can keep them going without like a hook every 10 seconds.
For sure. And it's different depending on who you are, what event you're covering, or
Yeah.
what you're producing. There's no one size fits all, and that's, why we have success in starting our own company.
So I want to hear a little bit of the lessons of being on the BD side and basically like trying to translate the value of this content. And I mean, certainly the value has borne out because you have a business today built on creating premium content in that space. So like, what were some of the early challenges, if any, the early kind of insights and aha moments to really be able to convey the value and what monetizing this content, what getting showcasing the value of this content looked like, whether it was just sticking a logo on it and saying, hey, there's a sponsor asset, boom, or telling more robust, richer stories, or doing stuff that's sponsors have asked for and getting more endemic opportunities or more organic opportunities. I'm gonna stop talking and let you take over because there's a lot here to uncover.
Yeah. So I would say when I was at the league, there were, it was always engagement, reach, and then revenue in terms of sort of the priorities from a social perspective, right? Like we wanted to use the LCC program to reach and engage fans where they were increasingly spending their time. And so, from that, like I think monetization, and obviously it's the NFL, so there's always going to be a lot of sponsors knocking and a lot of sort of business opportunity to really monetize this content. But it will, if you make really engaging content, good things will happen. If you make good stuff, good things will happen. It may take some time, but, we sort of, even when there's a brand integration in it, we're focusing on making quality work, and the monetization is going to follow. And obviously it's a balance, but we see brand dollars and ad dollars, flowing towards our world for a reason. And it's because people are spending their time there and good things are going to stand out.
Yeah, I think what was cool early on, even still today to some degree, is if you think about that vertical social first content, especially even going back to your days at Snap, like something that I think people didn't appreciate as much at Snap as maybe they could have, it should have, is that when you're going tapping through a story, when tapping through Instagram stories, it's taking up your full screen. You have nothing else to distract you. You're looking at that screen. Whereas if you're watching a broadcast, you're looking at who knows what else. Even if you're watching a horizontal video in the feed on Twitter or something, like you can be looking at totally other things. So to be able to have your undivided attention is certainly something interesting there, even if it's not getting the same like overall impressions or metrics. Is that it's a different type of impression, a different type of view there. As one example, and to your point, it's different audience perhaps. I also want to kind of glean a little bit of like how this evolution of social first content has become more not just acceptable but welcomed across platforms. Like, was there a time early on where it was like anathema to say, "Hey, NFL Network, it's not illegal for you to put this content on, the linear show, like on NFL Game Day highlights or whatever, on a game day morning or Good Morning Football. You can use this content; it's quality." Or putting like
Yeah.
even now, like I think people are like not freaking out, but like astounded to know that there's a lot of more YouTube being watched on connected TVs than there is on the YouTube app
I
itself
saw
on
that.
phones and web browsers. And so there's something to say that hey, like it's not just social first content. It's just this is the quality content now, and it can fit everywhere. Wherever the best stories that are being told, like people will go and find it.
Yeah, and so, in the beginning, there definitely were a lot of rules and restrictions around sort of the game window and how many highlights, we could use from certain things. And, we'd be getting like amazing stuff of highlights and just sort of figuring out how it could be used. And I think it really has evolved into, good organizations understand the value of creating a really good social experience. And that means different things, whether you're a sports league or a team or just an event operator.
Mhm.
But in many ways, things that we saw early on with the program where we're driving conversation online and we're, hitting really passionate communities and we're going to fans, we're posting things on, whether it's Reddit or whether it's, all of the different social platforms, reaching and engaging people where they're spending their time is always going to be a good business strategy. And that's why the program worked at the most foundational level.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that a little bit, and because part of what what this overall discussion is about is distribution. Is hey, we have this really awesome content. How can we get it out to the most people? And yes, there's the ONO, the owned and operated channels, our own Instagram, our own feed, the team channels, to some degree, the athlete channels. Maybe there's broadcasters, maybe there's creators. We're seeing the NFL among others now doing giving some access to content to creators to be able to use at
Yeah.
their agency. Same with like alumni as well to some degree. So even now with both what you see and how you saw the LC program evolve over time, as well as what you are thinking about when you're working with a client at Zero Blitz. What does distribution look like today? And like, is the O&O of the actual quote unquote brand channels like is that not even the most important channel anymore because you're going to get more opportunity if you expand elsewhere.
So one of the biggest things we did to make the LCC program successful was very early on, at a foundational level, we hired amazing creatives to work on game day. And
Hmm.
we were able to get real-time highlights out that were at a great quality. But what really made it work was then, we went all over NFL media and beyond, and we went to every single group and we said, hey, you now have thousands of things from game day and beyond. What is the best way to use that content?
Yeah.
And so for NFL social, right, it was fueling an Instagram story that could be branded and give you the best moments as they happened.
Hmm.
It was developing things directly for players. So Justin Jefferson scores a touchdown, does the gritty, and then he's got that video from an LCC ready to post right when he gets to the locker room. It
Yeah.
was, hey, NFL fantasy, when people draft Patrick Mahomes, can they see all of the content that we've captured from him during a game and get that alert to be like, oh, wow, he just did something cool. Let's put it on fantasy. It was, hey, our college partners, you still have a big, Justin Jefferson's got a big following at
Oh yeah.
LSU. LSU, here you go. Take this footage and make it something that will reach your audience. People are, creating GIFs and sending GIFs in their text chat with their friends. Let's take this gritty dance that Justin Jefferson just did that we just shot and put it on Giphy. Hey, let's tell a story about the dance on the NFL's TikTok channel.
Yeah.
Let's bring in an influencer to do the gritty with Justin Jefferson and make a viral moment out of that. Let's, of course, give that footage to ESPN, NBC.
Hmm.
Guess what? The program worked because we were able to take, one moment or something that happened in a game and make it so much more by building out our, I'll call it the creator ecosystem.
Hell yeah. No, this is the kind of stuff that's so stimulating is to think about we have this awesome content. What are all the ways we can maximize the value of it and ooze every drop, I guess, or squeeze every drop, so to speak, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see playing out now or even today when it comes to like, is that the path to maximizing the monetary value, the monetization of that content? Are there new pathways to monetize? Like, is it just a matter of getting more and more sponsors bought in, or slicing and dicing content in different ways, or having broadcasters pay extra for it in cases? Like, what do you see now of like maximize? What does it mean today to maximize the value of content, both in terms of direct dollars and, as you alluded to before, certainly the overall impressions and engagement that you can get from content, which
Mhm.
has really no ceiling there, it seems like.
So I think if you are a sports league event operator and team today, the number one goal of social and what we do is to create really meaningful highlights, short form and long form, that will engage your community, reach people where they are spending their time, and allow you to build conversation and fans from there. Sponsorship money will follow good content, good stories, and good brands. And that's what we see with our company, is how important it is to make, premium social first content. And, we even at the NFL, we obviously engaged sponsors, throughout a lot of the process. And
Mhm.
there's many different tools to monetize now, whether it's, YouTube pre-roll
Right.
or, a variety of different things. But the content guides, what works. And you bring in sponsors naturally that makes sense. And then even if you're a brand, because we work a lot with brands now, there are ways to activate around promo campaigns or events or even sponsoring long form content that makes a lot of sense for both. Like when it works really well with not a ton of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Like when it works, it's seamless in many ways.
No, hell yeah. It doesn't feel forced in any way, and it's welcomed by fans, which is certainly the key. Just a few minutes left here with Russell Simon. He is a partner at Zero Blitz Media. I want to touch briefly on a little bit of like certainly pulling from all your experiences and what you do today as well. When you're working with a client, whether it's an event-based thing or not, like how do you kind of balance the idea of let's create something that's going to end up creating really good social content, or vice versa. Like, let's look at this thing that you already have planned, this activation you already have planned, and what's the best way to capture it for social. Like, if you're at a brand activation, that they're at the NFL experience or at the MLB All-Star game, wherever it might be, you can say, well, let's make sure that we plan this event out so that it's amenable to creating awesome social content, or vice versa, coming from other directions, saying, hey, great event you have planned. This is how we're going to shoot it to maximize social. So like, how do you balance or is there a right way to go about it? Of let's create something that's going to feed that like set us up for success versus let's take what you already have and maximize success of it.
Yeah, so look, obviously it would be the best case scenario to be in the room as early as possible to bring these things to life. The
Yeah.
TikTok tailgate free Super Bowl concert, series we worked on, there was a lot of work that the marketing team did to get that stood up from its infancy stages.
Yeah.
It's always better to sort of plan these things with an eye towards social and content. That is not just naturally the way it works in a lot of these organizations,
Mhm.
and progress and change comes over time. So, a lot of times still, with our firm, we've got events, or we've got sort of an outline of a plan based on current reality if we're, helping capture content from an event. And it's how do we maximize this, and how do we make something happen in a tight time frame, or
Mhm.
when we have talent for 5 minutes. And so you want to be involved in the planning from day one, but in reality, the whole point is that you're nimble and flexible and can make things happen
No
under a
doubt.
variety of
Is
different
there an
circumstances.
opportunity there to say, hey, there's a better way to do this? Like, let's get the content people to be part of this earlier on so that when we're building out the operation, that we're thinking about these things and that we can help create more magic moments and set ourselves up for success.
Totally. So I think the number one thing that we can help do with Zero Blitz, and the number one thing that smart businesses do now, is to enable a content ecosystem and really decentralize a lot of the content that they are making, whether they are a league, an event operator, or a team. And I've become really obsessed with sort of up and coming leagues. If you think about like the Baller League, which just
Yeah.
sort of happened for the first time, right? You could watch Baller League on the official YouTube channel run by Sky. You could join a watch along from their creator managers. They've got Mark Goldbridge, who's a really great soccer streamer, in a streaming booth at the event. And you've really got creator-led distribution, and you are meeting fans where they are in a way that, again, is meant to like reflect the reality of how people are watching games today and engaging with content today. And that's been sort of the next step beyond, really good social first like LCC content. It's actually affecting the presentation of the actual product in a meaningful way that works. Like what I just talked about is very different from just having a bunch of, influencers like do something at a game where it's not as natural. These new up and coming leagues are driven first and foremost by social content primarily and getting attention and getting people talking. And, think about like the Sidemen charity match and like some of the, they're selling out Wembley on a Premier League weekend to watch this stuff. So it obviously works. And, we all should pay attention. And, my old, friends at the NFL have done a really good job of this, of engaging creators. And, we've been able to start our own company and really build it out just based on working with talent, developing content that works.
Yeah, I imagine there's a little bit of innovator's dilemma there as well, where like a small up and coming league can take more chances, can try new things. They don't
Of
have a
course,
billion
they're not
dollar rights
getting
deal.
$5 billion from, and again, good problem to have when you've got billions already lined up. So I think,
Totally.
if you're the NBA, you're the NFL, you're the Premier League, there are different things you can do. But even a program like the LCC program then has outsized benefit to you, right? If you're able to, get people, bring them into the game window, create really engaging content that moves the needle, you can just do so much given the fan bases you already have.
Yeah. Just a couple last things here before we'll share. We'll stat. I can keep you all day, Russell, but I know you got a company to run too. Is kind of where do you see like some of the key content trends heading right now? I mean, it feels like we've TikTok was a great entry into the system, around the pandemic when it really started to blow up. And since then we've seen some bits and starts here and there. Be Real had its very quick moment in the spotlight. We have, YouTube is as strong as ever. YouTube Shorts are becoming bigger and bigger now, but I think short form content is here to stay. We've seen, Twitch have up bits and starts over the time. Like Live has gone up and down over time as well. Certainly, the creator elements are bigger than ever now. Lifestyle content, like where do you see like the opportunities for? Like, where's the innovation going to happen in content? Whether it's on the production side, on the distribution side, on the engagement side. What are you thinking about from a zero blitz
Yeah.
perspective, and what should we be thinking about overall in the industries?
Yeah. So I think um, there's going to be, the idea that there's going to be some new platform that emerges at this point, given the recent track record, other than TikTok, unlikely. But I do think the role of the work that we do and the importance of sort of more premium, but meant to be sort of engaged with here or on YouTube, frankly, it's only going to become more and more important. And so, for me, I think it's less about like, oh, there's going to be some new short form UGC app that randomly like blows up, which I don't think is going to happen,
Right.
and much more sort of steady incremental progress where good brands are going to be, you know, putting more investment into content, putting more investment into reaching and engaging fans, where they're spending their time. And this was sort of a good enough bet that I was willing to, join David and sort of really help scale our company, because I think the appetite for premium social first content around events, around promotional campaigns, branded content, short form, even long form like documentaries and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, this is only going to be more important. And look at, Baller League, Unrivaled, very excited for the Snow League, like these up and coming leagues that are shaking things up and doing things a little differently, have a bit of an opportunity to capture some attention. And everyone in the industry should be paying attention to these innovations and how these companies are emerging that are truly social driven, creator driven. The Kings League, which has had phenomenal success, or Bryson DeChambeau's YouTube channel that,
Mhm.
really changes how everyone views him in a really material way. This stuff does matter. And I just foresee more incremental ad dollars, investment, and focus on our area as time goes on.
Hell yeah. No, the
Not
athlete.
really a sexy answer, but like I think it's sort of incremental progress at this point.
No, I think that's the right way to think about it. I mean, rather than waiting for some transformational thing that it's going to be hard pressed to get another stories revolution or another TikTok revolution in the near future. As you think about too from your perspective at Zero Blitz and what even you're seeing in the space, how do you see an agency, a company like yourselves, like what do the org charts look like now? What should they look like when it comes to an in-house content team and how it works alongside an opportunity to work with someone like a Zero Blitz to upscale for whether it's for an event or sort of a type of premium content or a type of opportunity that we can't do ourselves, whether it's where we need help doing animation or motion or virtual reality or whatever it might be. Like how do you see that kind of fitting in with if I'm building a team org chart today, what should I be thinking about from building out my content team and how we can use or not use outside help?
Yeah, so I think I'll speak first from sort of the Zero Blitz perspective. We're a production company that partners with agencies and brands to develop premium social first content primarily for brands, creators, and athletes. And
Mhm.
so, what does this look like in practice? Hey, we have an event coming up. We need to build a content team to augment our own capabilities to be able to deliver across TikTok, a long form series, all these, many different beats in a very compressed time window.
Mhm.
That's one thing. Hey, we're doing a really important promotional announcement to reveal a new shoe, a new product, a new
Yeah.
collab. We need graphics, we need animation, we need it to sort of be something that, we necessarily can't do ourselves. Hey, we want to develop an original content series on one of our athletes or tell the story of our fans, and we're based in the UK, but you're in America. There's a lot of different ways where Zero Blitz is elevating internal production teams and internal social teams
Mhm.
with really premium content at scale, at speed. And I think for us, there's a lot of growth opportunities ahead, both in sports and frankly with brands that are activating across events, promo campaigns. The things that I've mentioned are not sports specific.
Totally.
And, the whole world is really trending into,
Yeah.
the type of content we
The
produce
old
is becoming
aphorism
more
now is like
important.
every company is a media company, or every company should think like a media company at least.
Yeah. And if your company wants to think like a media company, Zero Blitz is here to help you do that. I will say, in the sports world in particular, you know, there's still so much room to grow in terms of, original content outside of game highlights and the game. Like I'm really fascinated by a lot of these like off the field, and we had a helmets off strategy at the NFL to like tell the story of our players. And obviously you can do that with, a big Netflix show, but you can do that with a really compelling, YouTube series that works. And so I think like as leagues and teams are thinking about building out their internal teams, you know, you need to be able to cover the basics at the fundamental level, right? Like you
Yep.
need to be able to get game day covered, get practices covered, come up with just the resources where you have support to do the basics. And then as you sort of grow, there are decisions to make of when you want to use the Zero Blitz and when you want to do things internally. And I think, the rule of thumb that I've seen, work from our clients and beyond is, you have an internal team that can handle a lot of the day to day, but as you think ahead to sort of the major beats and the major moments, that's where it can make sense to sort of bring on an external production partner. And typically there's a really good symbiotic relationship where, it makes sense when someone's calling us versus when they have
Yeah.
internal capabilities. But overall, investment in this space, I think, is only going to continue. And good organizations are already heavily investing in, creators, editors, influencer teams, becoming media companies in many ways.
Yeah, I think like a trend too that kind of buttresses all of this as well is the NFL kind of pioneered this almost with how can we create more and more tentpole events and like sports in particular.
Totally.
Like sports, if you let it can become very monotonous, and every game starts to feel like the same old routine. But it's like, how do we create and maximize more magic, more tentpole moments? And that goes for brands, it goes for sports, it goes for entertainment, whatever industry or vertical you're in. Is you only have so many opportunities where you're going to be able to command a lot of attention. How do we make sure that we maximize that opportunity? And whether that is staffing up with content or creating something special or creating an event and activation, making more tentpole moments and making more of those outsized outcomes.
And that's, what Zero Blitz does. We make the moments matter and make them stand out. And even if you're an NBA team on like game 70, this is a challenge that you have to sort of overcome. Even if you're an NFL team on game 14 of the season,
Hmm.
making an investment in something like the LCC program, something like, what our company does now, is we're driving conversation. We are generating fan buzz and attention around when people should be paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's something that, takes investment and resources in order to do properly.
It's a good place for us to cut off, Russell, but I'm going to ask one more thing because I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that is, you are taking you and David together and building Zero Blitz, and hopefully going to have decades ahead of you working in the content space and social content wherever things take us as these paradigms evolve. And generative AI is, of course, the big thing out there, the big theme. So as you think about the opportunity with Gen AI and maybe some of the pitfalls and challenges as well, like, do you
Mm-hmm.
think about it as, hey, like the staff or our staff is Zero Blitz, in theory, we should be able to be 200% more productive as Gen AI it gets better and better over the years. Or how do you think about like the opportunity with Gen AI? Is it more about, hey, can we be more productive with fewer people? Can we do stuff that we couldn't do without it? Can we do stuff more quickly? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's the opportunity there, and how much of a FOMO or like making sure that you don't miss out on an opportunity are like do you have day to day?
Yeah, so I think we're very tactical about, focusing on helping brands, creators, athletes, etc., execute in the real world. Like Gen AI is not replacing an LCC standing on the
Right.
sidelines, probably. And so, we're focusing on in real life events and campaigns that really stand out. And I think more broadly, certainly there's tools for any creative, Gen AI is going to really change workflows and, make a lot of things different and streamline a lot of processes. My answer would probably be different if I owned, a Hollywood studio and it was like, oh, we really can make a movie that looks pretty different from the way movies are made now. But I
Like
think in
it's
our
almost like,
neck of
hey,
the
like we have 3 hours of footage that with our LCC captured, and let's feed it into this algorithm that has trained on hundreds of our videos, and it can help us spit out some like, at least a first draft and save us 5 or 6 hours on the post production process.
For sure. And I think for sort of day by day, like block and tackle content, there are a lot of cool things that AI can do. And I think a lot of like more personalized experiences probably, like especially as sports become more international and it all just sort of, becomes one, you can really be creating content in a bunch of different languages
Yeah.
and do things way beyond like what's happening now. And I think those are sort of quick wins that makes sense. And I think we'll start to see a lot of that before we see, some full 30-minute AI created show. But like if that, that also could happen. Like it seems like we are on the forefront of massive change for media overall. And I think I'm more confident than ever that, Zero Blitz and companies like it will always need to be making really good content and really good videos, really good photos from events, for brands, for creators. And even if AI comes, I welcome AI augmenting our services, but people will always need, content from events and things in the real world.
Yeah, I think the best content will continue to be telling real life stories, augmenting real life events, and that's going to be more meaningful to someone than something that just comes out of thin air and it's not based on reality in some ways. I mean,
In our world, I mean, if you're making like
right,
episodic television, I would maybe
correct.
feel a little differently.
As I go back and watch the endless episode of Seinfeld on Twitch, or if that's still a thing, the Jen
Yeah,
Seinfeld or whatever.
I saw what I saw. Like that, that stuff's like it's mind blowing, and that I think can like really get people interested in watching something like that, or like choose your own adventure stories and things like that. But I'm glad we sit in our seats and are not, running a legacy media company.
Hell yeah. All right, it's a dynamic space. It's ever evolving, ever changing, and so awesome to be able to get your insight and perspective on it. We're here with Russell Simon with Zero Blitz Media. We're gonna have some more fun with Russell coming up in our clips segment. First episode shareable stat coming up right now. Awesome, awesome stuff from Russell Simon, again, partner at Zero Blitz Media. Look up more information about Zero Blitz. You'll hear more about it and more good stories and anecdotes and insights from Russell in our quick hitting question segment. But first, this episode's shareable stat. This episode's shareable stat, I was choosing between a lot of them, but the one I'm going to go with is 1 million. And that is 1 million new followers over the last 2 months for sports creators on Threads. Now, is that a lot or is that not a lot? It's hard to say for sure, but the fact is that Meta put this information out there and has been promoting it through various PR initiatives. They want people to know that sports is a category that they are prioritizing on Threads. I think a lot of people have always thought that, well, if Threads wants to really truly challenge Twitter, that sports should be a part of it. And it looks like now, based on the PR efforts and based on the numbers that they're trying to put out there, that sports is becoming a bigger focus for the platform. So again, 1 million new followers over the last 2 months for sports creators. Now, some teams are on there, some teams are not on there, some leagues are on there, some leagues are not on there, and so everyone is not really a consistent, coherent way that everyone is treating Threads right now. And in some cases, really not a one-to-one replacement for Twitter. But people are not going there necessarily for the quick during the game updates like you would for play-by-play or in-game updates on Twitter, in-game highlights like you might use Twitter for X if you prefer to call X. So look at how can you use Threads. If Meta is talking about this big growth by sports creators, what are these sports creators doing to thrive on the platform? Are they starting conversations? Are they sharing articles and that lead to conversations? Are they sharing highlights? Are they doing various fan engagement activities like polls or contests or whatever it might be? I'm not here to give you those answers, but the fact is that now's the time to take a look at what Meta thinks is doing well on the platform as they talk about this growth in the sports sector and the sports vertical. So whether you're on Threads or not, it's certainly something worth taking a look at. When Meta puts something out there and they want to promote it through various PR initiatives, it's best that you listen and usually at least talk about what kind of action you might want to take based on what the information that's being put out there. So again, one more time, that shareable stat: 1 million new followers for sports creators in the last 2 months. That is something that Meta's putting out there themselves, so you can trust the source, or at least as much as you can, or at least take away something from that source. So that's the shareable stat. More importantly, though, stick around. Here's some more good stuff with Russell Simon of Zero Blitz Media. Back from this episode of Shareable Stat, I am joined once again by Russell Simon. He is a partner at Zero Blitz Media. So interesting to be able to hear about all your experiences and insights and ideas and thoughts and such good stuff in your interview. Are you now ready to go through some clips?
I'm ready.
All right, this is gonna be a fun one for you. Number one, the most you talked about a little bit about being at USC during and getting some experience there. You were doing some broadcasting. So tell me the most memorable radio call from your time at USC.
So USC with Sam Darnold won the Rose Bowl over Penn State on a game-winning field goal at the end of the game. The broadcast is somewhere on YouTube. It was probably a little more hysterical than I would have, hoped for looking back. But that was definitely my most memorable call. Craziest game. That was one of the best days ever.
And so, like, when you're going to like a pivotal play like that, do you know what you're gonna say, or do you like purposely leave it so that it happens organically and naturally off the cuff?
It was from the dome. I think if I wanted to, I had a future as a play-by-play broadcaster. Um, as you can see if you watch the clip. Um, it was about a 12 out of 10 on the excitement level, but the game was crazy.
That was a very memorable game. And Sam Darnold at his finest there. Gotta love it. Number two, we talked about your time working on Snapchat live stories. So tell me the most viral piece of content, or just the one that's most memorable. If you don't know like the exact virality numbers, that was part of your time producing Snapchat live stories.
No question, WrestleMania. That I became obsessed with the WWE from working at Snapchat because they create fandom out of literally, thin air,
Yeah.
and it's an unbelievable product. They do an amazing job, and WrestleMania was always a huge deal at Snap.
Hell yeah. I can only imagine what it was like earlier this year when John Cena famously turned heel and
Yeah.
yeah, probably that would have that blown up all the socials, that's for sure. Number three for you, Russell, tell me like the most common tip or guiding principle that you would tell LCCs in sports, like something that would just over and over again that this is something that should be a kind of a guiding mantra for you.
Your attitude, reliability, responsiveness, and professionalism is equally as important as being an awesome creator.
Ooh, I like that one. That's one I'm gonna keep in mind as well. It all comes down, especially when you're in those high pressure environments around those athletes. Like you gotta have like a good attitude on your shoulders.
Mhm.
All right, this is gonna be an interesting one for you. Besides that Rose Bowl that you were working at, tell me the most memorable game you've been at across any sport,
Definitely any of the Super Bowls. I was
no doubt.
blessed enough to go to four. That's kind of an easy answer. As a Knicks and Jets fan, there have not been a ton of opportunities for memories over the course of, 30 years now. So probably the Dante DiVincenzo game winner last year in game one or games, whatever it was, of the Knicks Sixers series was probably as good as it's been for me in my life as a Knicks fan. And I had the good fortune to have gotten a ticket for my fiance to that game. So she became a diehard Knicks fan from that moment. So that one was really memorable for me.
And that's when you knew she was the one. No.
I mean, if you're willing to date a Knicks or Jet fan, you know, they're a guy who's going to be loyal no matter what. So
True.
it should be a big green flag.
I would say I have sympathy for you as a Knicks as being a Knicks fan or being a Jets fan, but the fact that you've been at several Super Bowls, you get no sympathy from me.
Yeah, sorry.
Number five for you. I'm gonna excluding your partner as Zero Blitz. Obviously, the most talented LC you worked with and why?
Well, I can't exclude my partner. David is certainly the most talented LCC and certainly the creative brains behind Zero Blitz, and we have an awesome company. I will say, you know, the thing that I'm most proud of with the program is how we've hired a lot of people who have gone on to do great things with the
Yeah.
LCC program as a launch pad. So I think about a guy like Kyle Gardner, who, shot me a note when he was working the Paris Olympics this year. And he had worked for the program, when he was like still in college and right after. And, those texts and the relationships that I've built, never get old. And that one, that in particular made me feel really good.
Hell yeah, that's a good call on there for sure. And yes, of course, your partner David is a very
Yeah.
talented producer. All right, number six for you, Russell. Tell me, we didn't touch on it too much in the interview, but before coming to Zero Plus, you spent time consulting with a company called FTI, I think, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a little, briefly tell us what FTI is, and I want to hear just the biggest lesson you learned because you got to do some interesting work while you were there.
Yeah. So I worked for a media and entertainment focused management consulting firm. And this was really from NFL BD. People came into the group and had either banking or consulting experience,
Mhm.
just build out sort of their analytical skill set. It was really a prereq. And then I came to BD during COVID because the LCC program was, quieter, obviously, during that period.
Yeah.
So it was sort of an interesting career journey for me that period. And, I left to, sort of get more of that analytical skill set. And I was able to work with a bunch of media and entertainment focused firms on growth strategy, um, all kinds of different more strategic projects.
Mhm.
And, certainly enjoyed it. But for me, I said always thought I would come back to content world
Right.
and what I did, for the bulk of my career thus far with the NFL and Snap. And so, this opportunity has really emerged to help build my own thing with David, and certainly grateful for that. I think what I really took away from was more than anything, how early we are to how important social first content and this world is. We're still early. I know it sounds like, we're not, but we are. And so that's why I still see so much opportunity and why I wanted to, start my own thing.
I like it. No, it's an interesting perch to be able to be there. You doing management consulting in general, and then being able to get exposed to the strategies of various companies and seeing where they're on the ball and where they're maybe missing things. And it's super interesting to hear for sure. Number
Sure.
7, I want you to put your tourist or travel hat on. Tell me the coolest place that you've traveled in the world, anywhere in the world, and also the place that you have circled as kind of where you want to travel to in the future.
Yeah, so coolest place is definitely Japan. I've got multiple guides because I've been twice. So anyone listening to this who wants to go, feel free to hit me up and I will send them to you and you will have a great time. I am very excited to be shortly going to Anfield for the Liverpool West Ham match as a big Liverpool supporter. It's been a bucket list thing forever to be able to do that. And so very excited. And that's big time on the bucket list. I didn't even know how I'm gonna react to like going in there and actually being there. It sounds like it's like hard to wrap my mind around that it's actually happening.
Hell yeah! I mean, in just weeks from now, you will be singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" at Anfield with all those fans. That's super cool.
Yes,
We'll have to I'll have to introduce you to some Premier League LCCs because we work with the Premier League on that. So that's your worlds can collide a little bit
that'd be
there.
great.
Number 8, time for our food question. Gotta ask the food question. Tell me the best meal to get in New York and where to get it. You're out there in New York. You know good food places. If I come out there and visit you, where are we going to get an awesome
Oh
meal?
man, we're going to get Italian food on Arthur Avenue if you're down for a bit of a trek to go all the way to the Bronx. No doubt that's where I'm taking you. There's like three good restaurants right on that strip. That's what we're doing.
I gotta know what's on your plate. What are you ordering?
We're going chicken parm, no doubt. We're doing some sort of like baked clams, garlic bread, appetizer. We're doing like a cheesecake dessert, like if we're really gonna go for it. I mean, listen to the authority with which I've got my order ready to go here.
Hell yeah.
Then maybe like a carbonara or vongole clams pasta on the side as well. They're gonna have to roll you out of there, but you would have a great time.
Eat like a champion. I love it. We will have to make that happen in the future. Number 9, coming down the wire here is Russell Simon of Zero Blitz Media. Tell me the most viral piece of LC content from your time in the NFL. What's that one that stuck out that just went crazy?
I think there was stuff around like remember when Rob Lowe wore the NFL hat?
Yes, of course.
I was like, go. I remember being like, I can't explain to you why this is a thing, but like calling the people who we had in SF being like, go find him right now. And like that was a fun one. We did a really cool thing where we made Ninja in like I think 2019, the Lions captain, and he did like a
Yeah,
coin toss at the game. And this was sort of early stages of like creators being more involved in
totally.
the league, and that one was really fun as well. Um, Also, I do remember, you don't really get starstruck much in this industry, but I did help cover the J-Lo Shakira Super Bowl announcement, and I had to go like at the end of the production and get like the selfie video from both of them.
Well,
And it was just so that was one that, obviously like nailed it. Like it got in the finished piece and everything. But after that was over, I was like, wow, like that one more than all the sports stuff that I've done, that one was more just like that was kind of crazy.
hell yeah. Oh, that's super cool.
So
That's
that
like
was fun. Yeah.
pop culture music royalty right there.
We made it happen.
Hell yeah. All right, last one for you. This might be the hardest question of the entire podcast. I know you're a USC fan, being an alum there. So tell me, their football coach, Lincoln Riley, tell me what is the over/under for college football playoff appearances for Lincoln Riley while he's at USC? So not championships necessarily, but at least CFP
Uh,
appearances while Coach Riley is still calling the shots for the Trojans.
Look, things can change quickly. Uh, 2.5, because if I go 1.5, they're probably getting another one. So 2.5.
There we go. All right. Well, the next season should be pretty important. We'll see if he can get that first one, and
Yeah, we'll
then 2.5 sounds
see.
more likely.
Absolutely.
All right, Russell, you crushed the clip segment of your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are. It could be whatever platform, blogger, newsletter, whatever, who they
Yeah.
are and why they're following.
Love Jordan Rogers. He's got a great sports marketing podcast and like this group on Instagram that I'm involved in that I think
Hell
is really
yeah.
great.
And for those
And then
listening, not Jordan Rogers, the former quarterback, right? It's the
no,
brand and content consultant or whatever.
yes. And then I actually really like Amanda Goetz. Not really a sports
Yeah.
person at all, but she has really good thoughts on personal branding that I want to certainly incorporate myself as we launch this and I sort of get my word out there about the company and the work that we've been doing. And frankly, she is totally not sports world at all, but I think she's amazing.
Good call out there for sure. We'll link them up in the show notes. And then how about you? Where can we find all things about you as well as
Yes.
media across digital social?
You can follow Zero Blitz Media on Instagram. Go to our website, again, just zeroblitzmedia.com, and then you can find me, Russell Simon. I'm across all of them, but mostly going to be on Instagram as we build this thing out. So really exciting 2025 to come. Obviously, really appreciate being here, Neil, and happy to keep in touch and keep this thing going. Love what you're doing as well.
Appreciate that. Check them out. Check out Zero Blitz Media. Keep an eye out about all the great work they're doing. Keep an eye out for Russell everywhere and just awesome stuff today. And thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Appreciate you.
Just fantastic being able to pick the brain of Russell Simon, partner at Zero Blitz Media, full of knowledge. One of the best people I know to be able to talk to you about this stuff. He and his partner David Kushner are doing great stuff at Zero Blitz Media. So check out some of their work, their portfolio. Certainly, if you're in the space, you want to look at what they can do for you guys as well. Just cannot thank Russell enough for coming on the podcast today and giving us some of his knowledge and insight. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz, or watching me. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn, the website, dsmsports.net, and the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.